Welcome. Happy Wednesday morning. You're tuning in live with the Rebel HR for an Ask Me Anything. And I'm excited this morning. I've already been arguing on LinkedIn, so I'm feeling a little spicy today. So come bring your questions. You're going to get really real answers today. I mean, you're always going to get real answers from me, but like I said, I'm a little spicy. I'm also very tired. Such a contradiction. I'm feeling spicy and tired all at once. So come on in. I have a topic to kick us off today for a few minutes until the questions start rolling in. That's kind of how I do it. I also, before we get into it, I want to remind everyone that, and I'll be linking the QR code later in the session, but I want to invite everybody to the community, the Rebel HR community, sitting on the school platform. Yeah, so it's a community for frustrated job seekers who have questions and like transparent truth answers and critical thought and multiple perspectives and nuance and context and discourse. And also within that community are a bunch of veteran recruiters like me, including I'm going to make sure that there are plenty of veteran recruiters now, resume writers, veteran recruiters now, career coaches, because that's what started this. I got tired of. I spent the last 3 years living in the comment sections of LinkedIn posts trying to add nuance and context back to so many discussions, and correcting misinformation. Most of the time, misinformation is being peddled by people selling something, people who benefit from your frustration, fear, and confusion. I want to put all those people out of business at this point. So that's why I've created this. Again, bringing vetted veteran recruiters together to answer the questions and put the nuance and the context back in the discussions of these engagement rage bait style posts that are selling a thing. So that's why we are here. That's why I'm showing up every Wednesday morning, whether I feel like it or not, to answer anybody's questions. So you go ahead and drop them in the comments. It's the only way to get questions in is to drop them in the comments. I'm going to kick off with a quick 5-minute explanation of culture fit. Okay. So I've been doing this just to give anyone who doesn't know who I am a little background. I've been recruiting and hiring for over 27 years. It's really the only thing that I'm very good at and know what I'm doing. So I've watched the term culture fit used in a lot of ways. I've seen the term culture fit get mired in assumptions and hijacked for bad intentions, all kinds of things. But I want to talk about what it actually is, what it actually isn't, how it has been leveraged poorly, and why it really should still matter to everyone, especially job seekers. Okay. So, somewhere along the line over the last 20 years and in all the work, recruiters exposed that there is truth to the fact that the term culture fit has been hijacked as a subjective rejection reason that most hiring managers aren't very good at being able to defend, right? It's an indefensible subjective rejection reason that a lot of times doesn't get prodded. So, what do I mean by that? So, in the past, culture fit could have been used or was used in some scenarios where that hiring leader didn't want to hire somebody who would be an outlier to the team, like they're different, right? Whether it's a background, identity, education, thought process, whatever. And many times, recruiters like me always usually prodded that, right? So, like, the average, a good recruiter, the typical good recruiter, right? There's a whole spectrum of recruiting, right? There are good ones, bad ones, and everything in between. But good recruiters um, aren't order takers, right? Or strategic partners. So when especially after a lengthy search, if a hiring manager came back on someone that for all intents and purposes had the perfect background and experience and skill set for the role, and they said not a culture fit, it was up to us to understand what they're talking about. Unfortunately, in a lot of environments, recruiters aren't prodding hiring leaders, or they're just, their own survival is the priority, and being agreeable and liked was more important. I mean, we can't fault people for that, right? Especially in this kind of climate, people are just trying to avoid the next layoff. So, I forgive some of that, right? A lot of times recruiters are not highly empowered in an environment. I have always been in startups, so I was pretty empowered in most of my environments. And I would prod that. And oftentimes there were real valid reasons that the person wasn't a culture fit, and that had nothing to do with identity, background, religion, socioeconomic. None of that was actually when a hiring manager would say, yeah, they're not a culture fit. Here are some examples. So in this is the best, I think, example of this. So in the startup world, pace matters, right? You're moving very fast. There's constant change being made. You're constantly pivoting strategy because it's a fail fast environment. You try a thing, it doesn't work, you pivot fast, next thing. Try another thing. That's the mindset that is required to be in a startup, right? So we may have a candidate who comes from a very large corporate background with lots of structure, lots of layers of hierarchy, and very little autonomy for independent thought. Okay. So when we say that that person is not a culture fit for that opportunity with the startup, it's legit. They're not, right? That person may not like constant change. They may not, they might prefer a very structured environment where how to get things done is a very clear protocol, right? Very clear processes, playbooks for every function, right? Whereas in the startup world, there are no playbooks. There's not even a clear strategy. That's the whole point of try a thing, fail fast, and then pivot to something else, right? And that's a mindset. And it's really hard to adapt to that mindset unless it's one that you kind of hold naturally. So that's an example of a valid not culture fit. There may also be so there's some companies, and I know we try to vilify this, or I see it publicly being vilified, but there are some companies that are very much hustle cultures. Everybody that works there is like super driven and motivated by their career growth, by their titles and income, by their success. That's their driver. Who are we to say that that's wrong, right? We don't yuck someone else's yum. I may not want to be in that environment, but people like that. So then when you get somebody who's like really focused on work-life balance and clocking out at 5 o'clock, which there's also nothing wrong with that, right? These two differences, there's nothing wrong with either of them, but you wouldn't fight that there isn't a misalignment there. You don't put the person who's, a job is just a job and my fulfillment comes from everything else in my life. You don't put them in the hustle environment where everybody there is totally immersed in their career as part of their life, like the biggest part. The person who isn't feeling that isn't going to fit in well with that. They're going to be miserable and they're going to get pushed out. So I want us to understand that, yes, not a culture fit has been in some cases used or hijacked to make biased hiring decisions, but that doesn't invalidate the idea of what culture fit is and why it should still matter to you and the company, right? If you force yourself into an environment that isn't actually a culture fit for you, you'll be miserable. Okay. There are environments too where everyone is very social. People like to go do things after work together. They like to go to happy hours. They like to whatever. There's nothing wrong with that inherently. But if you don't like that and you just want to go to work and leave and not be friendly with anybody, why you wouldn't like that environment? And coming in and trying to change it for all the people who do like it is also weird, right? Like we have to be okay with the idea that that alignment is the primary crux of what makes a hiring decision a good one. Alignment on both sides, right? And every person shouldn't be well aligned for every job and every company. That doesn't ring true. That doesn't make sense, right? So it's like the lid, there's a lid for every pot kind of scenario. Instead of worrying about vilifying that company for not aligning for you, go find ones that do. That's the premise. Okay. So I've shared my 2 cents on culture fit. Happy to expand if anybody has any questions on that or other things. Go ahead and drop any questions you have in the comments. I know we left off last week with some unanswered comments in the comments section. I don't have that up. I don't really know how to like look at that and do this at the same time. So I'm not sure what those are, but if anyone wants to throw any in there, feel free. I could also keep talking about other things that have come up. Like I was in a whole argument with somebody this morning who tried to sell me that there is no such thing as professional standard in interviews, and vaping in an interview on screen is fine. Like, I mean, I personally could care less if anybody vapes. I have no judgment about people's habits at all. Zero. I have my own habits that I deal with. Um, so I don't judge people based on their habits. The judgment is whether or not you have the situational awareness not to vape in an interview. It's not the vaping that is being judged. Okay. Like this is a comprehension issue that I was having with somebody this morning. I wasn't saying that there's anything wrong with vaping. They knew I wasn't saying there's anything wrong with vaping, but all that landed for them was that I was saying there was something wrong with vaping, but I wasn't. I don't care if somebody vapes. I don't care what anybody does, but like in the 30 minutes of an on-screen interview or 45, like don't do things that are questionable around professionalism. Err on the side of caution in an interview. The whole point is an interview is like you're making your best first impression. You're putting your best foot forward. You're on your best behavior. Like, right? You're only going to get more comfortable and casual from there. So if you're vaping on an interview, I fully expect that you're going to be like snorting coke with a client in the meeting. Like, because I don't know. I don't know. You've displayed that your situational awareness that you struggle with knowing when it makes sense or not to do certain things. It's not about vaping. I don't care. I don't care what anyone does in their free time at all. But again, showing up to an interview to vape is weird at best. So, what's the biggest learning curve in bench sales recruiting? Oof. Good salespeople don't want to sit on a bench. I don't really know. I don't really, first of all, I don't fully know what bench recruiting means. I'm assuming I mean, like I know what bench recruiting and consulting is, right? Always having people ready to go into a client environment, into a consulting engagement. I'm not sure what bench sales recruiting would be. I know that sales recruiting in general is challenging because when people are really successful, they're typically making a lot of money and have a huge book of business. If you take them out of that company and they go into a new company, they can't call any of the people in their book of business. They can't call any old clients. They can't call any of those relationships. So they have to rebuild a whole new book of business. It's incredibly hard to find a compelling case for that. Yeah. So, sales recruiting is very challenging. especially those top producers. It's like, what's the case for a top producer to leave? You have to throw a whole lot of money at them, maybe big inflated titles, things like that. But, and of course, wine and dine them and all those things. But it's a hard case to make, especially in a market like this. I would say in a market like this, pretty much all people are feeling somewhat risk averse, right? And leaving a sales role where you're already successful and making good money feels like a unnecessary risk to take in a very volatile economy. That's my takeaway, right? In this economy, it's better to be the senior person, the senior successful person, than it is to be the newbie trying to ramp. I wouldn't, like if a company has a layoff, that senior successful person is always going to be the keeper over the, more junior person ramping. So I don't know, Lavanya, if that answered your question. I feel like I didn't. I don't feel like I fully understood what you were asking. Maybe you can throw another one in there and like maybe add a little more context. I've done a ton of sales recruiting over 27 years in all different industries, from, a lot in tech, a lot of enterprise level tech sales, the ones that are 150 base, 150 upside, 300 KOTE. That was like standard for the kinds of enterprise sales roles in tech. To mortgage industry, I did a lot in, before the bubble burst, like 2006, 5, 6, going into 7. Mortgage was hot, hot, hot. I was placing underwriters and, all kinds of, high level salespeople in there. So I do have a lot of sales recruiting experience, and I feel like I could probably drill down better for you if I have a little more context on the question. I feel like I failed. I'm sorry. What else? What else does anybody have? I need more. I would also say, in terms of, because you're asking about the learning curve, I'm going to take the bench out and just say learning curve in sales recruiting. You really have to learn. You have to get really, really nuanced and niche around like specific industries. Like, what are you selling and who are you selling to? If you can match up what you're selling to who you're selling to, and there's a pretty good solid match there, I think that that's helpful. I think of sales recruiting kind of like Venn diagrams, right? Like the places where there's overlaps are often really good places to pull people from. Because remember I said it has to be really compelling for a top producer to leave. One thing that makes it compelling is a new product, a new thing to sell, a new space to learn. Maybe they're getting bored, right? It gets boring making all that money, when you're a successful salesperson. So maybe they just need some time, they want to be in a space where they can learn something else. You keep saying bench sales recruiting. I'm going to ask for a definition of what that means to you. But can AI replace? I think AI can replace parts of any recruiting, but like very certain, and not replace. I don't like the word replace. I don't think we should be looking at AI to replace, but augment. Okay, so. And I guess if you augment one person, essentially you're replacing other people. So I guess that's a thing, but it still feels better to say augment and not replace. But I think that where AI can augment recruiters the most is at the sourcing level, and considering people who are less visible, finding people who are less visible on like LinkedIn, finding them in other parts of the internet, right? So I could send an AI agent out to scour conference attendee lists, which I think is a really good use for an AI agent. If you can find the right conferences where your particular brand of, salespeople live, what specific industry, what specific niche they're in, and then you can go find those conferences that are relevant, and then, take have the AI bring you back lists of people that are, highlighted in those various different conference publications. So I think that that's a really underutilized recruiting tool. I also love the idea of recruiting within communities. So really good salespeople are going to be embedded in the communities where their customers are. Hear it again. Really good salespeople are going to be really embedded in communities where their potential clients live. Okay. Not so much in communities with other salespeople, but in communities where their target profile customer exists. That's a great place to find them. So, um, you know, I still think humans are more creative than AI today. I'm sure that'll change eventually. But I do think AI can augment us in several different areas. I don't hate the top of funnel AI screening either to be able to include more people in the process. That's more reactive for inbound applicants from a in-house corporate recruiter perspective. But I also think there are plenty of use cases for AI and agency recruiting as well. What else can I answer? I hope that's helpful. I'm still lost on like the bench part. I'm maybe not, like I said, I've been doing this for a very long time. And to me, bench usually means like, um, oh, to me, bench usually means like consultants waiting to address client needs, right? They may be sort of sales-y, but for the most part, they're consultants. And the only time they're on the bench is when there isn't an active client, assignment or engagement that they're working on, but they don't stay on the bench very long, right? That's the only association I have for bench. So I'm going to keep leaving the word bench out of your questions and answering them anyway. If anybody else is listening and wants to chime in with an interpretation of bench sales, please do. Any idea bench sales portals? I think, again, I just need a deeper understanding of what your interpretation of bench sales is so that I can answer these questions better. Portals. Like I said, I recruit salespeople. I like communities where they are. I like conference attendee lists a lot. This is all pretty old school ideas in creative recruiting and sourcing. Salespeople are pretty easy to get a hold of. You just have to act like you're buying their product or interested in considering their product. They make themselves visible on purpose because they're actively trying to sell something. So, they're everywhere. You can also search LinkedIn and look at people posting about their expertise in a particular technology tool platform, whatever, machinery, devices, whatever it is that they sell. You can kind of scour LinkedIn to find posts from about that topic. And there should be a lot of people chiming in who sell that product, whatever that is. And I believe you can set up an AI agent to do that as well, to go find you social media posts that are, being posted by and shared by salespeople. So I think for salespeople, the real key is getting into the industry niche, understanding what they're selling, what is the solution, and who they're selling it to. Because if you can find somebody who's sold an adjacent solution, like a similar tech or a similar product to the same audience, I'll give you an example. So there's lots of different HR technologies, right? So say I've been selling ATS systems to HR leaders, ops leaders, CEOs, et cetera. Okay. ATS is obviously our applicant tracking systems that recruiters use. I still may be a very good fit to pivot a little on product from ATS and now start selling HRIS systems, which is more that human resource information system platform. It's different than an ATS, but there are similarities. And what's really similar is who I'm selling to. right? I'm going to be selling to the same people, whether it's the ATS or an HRIS or a sourcing AI tool or whatever, right? So those tangential pivots, I think, should be leveraged more, right? You may get a better candidate for your client if you pull from something that's really related and close and tangential, but not the exact product. The other thing the other scenario that's helpful with is getting around non-compete clauses. So if I'm selling ATSs, say I'm selling Greenhouse, and Ashby wants to hire me to sell their ATSs, I probably can't for 12 to 18 months sell a direct competitor's ATS, in the market. So by pivoting and going more to like a sourcing tool, an HRIS tool, or some other HR tech where I'm selling to the same audience and targets, but not the same product, gets around that non-compete too. I think that adjacency and like, I won't call it fully pivoting industries. You can't really pivot fully without having a bridge to either the who you are targeting or what you're selling, right? So you can either sell a different product to the same audience or sell the same product to a different audience, which actually would be harder based on non-compete. So I don't know. I know I'm not answering a portal question, but I don't think portals are the answers. Like real people, good people, people who connect with other people. I don't know that they're sitting in portals waiting to be found. They're out selling their product to people and companies. The other great place to get referrals is from existing clients. This is maybe the most underutilized avenue for good, solid referrals. Um, you talk to your best clients. Some companies have like a consumer advisory board or something like that, but you talk to your sales team, right? You get them involved in the recruiting for this, okay? And you have them close their calls with their existing clients. And this may be an account management thing in some companies, but in a lot of companies, salespeople are still popping in and checking in on clients they've sold. But ask them, who of our competitors are reaching out to you? Who's the best salesperson that has contacted you about another tool? I know you're not leaving Greenhouse because you love us so much, but like, who's the best Ashby rep that's reached out to you? Or who's the best Lever rep that's reached out to you? They will they would love to have the most interesting person that contacts them go to the company they actually use. Like, there's nothing negative or competitive really about that. There's no integrity issue there at all. Um, I could tell you the best people who sell a certain thing. I mean, it's hard in this day since people don't like talking to people. They'd prefer to just email and text, but I could probably identify some really good salespeople who reach out to me. And that's the other thing is I flip cold calls. So if people cold call me, I often flip it to trying to recruit them. Because if you actually are picking up the phone in 2026 and I actually answered and we're actually having a conversation, you already have proven that, you're half the battle is won. You're probably an SDR or a BDR and you're outbound calling and you're trying to make connections in a really fickle world where people don't like to answer phones. So yeah, I use all the non-traditional sources for looking for people. And there's so many more that I could dive into, but I'm already pretty far off your actual question, which is about sales portals. So yeah. Who else is out here and who else has questions? While we're in between questions, I'm going to throw up this is the QR code up in the top left-hand corner to the school community for the Rebel HR. I'm inviting any job seekers who like transparent truth and aren't super sensitive about how it's received or how it's provided, how it's offered, because my brand is, straight up. I am straight up. I'm not insulting. I'm just very honest and I'll share the truth. I believe with the truth, anyone can be more strategic than if they're operating from assumptions, misperceptions, and misinformation. It's just what I see. So yeah, please join us in the community. There's the QR code, scan it. I'll leave it on for the rest of the call, which is going to be very, very long if we don't get more comments, questions in. So Lavanya, do you have more questions? Anything except sales, bench sales, unless you can expand on what you mean by bench sales. I would love if you could put a comment in there describing I could even Google it, I guess. I mean, I'm not in a question. So what is bench sales? Bench sales in IT refers to the structured process of marketing, positioning consultants who are not currently assigned to projects. Right. That's, to me, those aren't salespeople, those are consultants. So that's interesting. I wonder if this is a regional thing. Bench sales teams are responsible for identifying potential clients who require staffing services and pitching the available consultants to them. So basically, Lavanya, if I'm getting that right, what you're the recruiter, and you sell consultants, like skilled teams of, experts in different subjects, I guess, to different consulting companies or to different client companies. I think that's what it's saying. I don't know that that's a whole lot different than other recruiting, except that it's kind of applying the temp mentality to highly professional, skilled people, which I feel would be really hard. I feel like so here's my experience with recruiting consultants, and in the consulting world, is that the best talent, the best people, the people who are best at what they do don't want to be in positions where they're sitting on the bench. And they don't necessarily want to be deployed to this company, that company, that company, and that company. I think that those people, the ones that are the best and have the most options, probably are usually going to be looking for in-house consulting roles. Okay, what do I mean by an in-house consulting role? So a lot of tech product companies have a services function of consultants, people who do anything from implementation to custom, integrations, APIs, all that stuff, right? They take the product and the customer's needs and they create unique solutions and connectivity that is applicable for that customer. Those folks, like I said, the best of those people, Lavanya, are going to want to work directly in the product company, as opposed to for like a Wipro or a Cognizant or like a systems integrator or, some other consulting environment where, it may pay well, but it's like bench. It's very, there's also a much higher risk of layoffs in that type of environment because if you keep people on the bench, you're still paying them. So, if there's not enough business for everyone on the bench, then they start laying off. So it's not the most stable. It's also a very high pressure environment from my experience because these companies are service orgs and they're not product companies per se. They partner with product companies to implement different products, but they're still service companies. It's a lot. Their people are the product, right? The consultants really are the product. So it's a different mentality. It's a different culture. There's a lot of pressure there. It's a very aggressive environment. And what I hear is people work a lot of hours. If a client has a need, It doesn't really much matter if it fits well within your work-life balance. The need is the most important thing because, again, it's like closing a purchase, right? But you're a person and you're a service. So, yeah, but there's a very high pressure environment. I don't love when I am the product, right? I don't love the pressure that exists when I am the product. It's just a different mindset. So there, I've learned something. Now I understand what that term um, bench sales recruiter is. And it's more the sales part isn't about who's sitting on the bench. The sales part is about the recruiter. You are the salesperson. The consultants are just consultants. They're the product. You're the salesperson. Now I have a better understanding of the term. So, yeah, I have experience with that, but not that specific terminology. All right, we've gone way deep on the bench sales recruiting stuff here. What else can I answer for anybody else? And I don't know if there's one of the things that I dislike about this platform is I literally can't see who else is on the call. If anyone else is on the call, I could be sitting here talking to myself on screen like an AI interview. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. It's a mystery. It's always a mystery on AMA. So I want somebody to come and ask me something really juicy, so I can get controversial and provocative on you guys. Really, that's my get down. That's what I like to do. Somebody ask me something that's provocative. Ask me about discrimination. Ask me about requests that recruiters have gotten that are really um, fully loaded with bias and discrimination and prejudice. Okay. Nathan, thank you for saving me. Okay. Whew. For senior management people who have a non-linear progression, that would be me. I'm one of those people. Feel free to look at my background. You'll see I'm a jack of many trades. Is there a different type of talent searching or recruiting staff members that understand someone who has an amalgamation of skills and talents? From my experience, recruiting firms have no idea how to deal with people like me. I assume that the non-linear career growth tends to be for people who get ghosted. Okay. Nathan, couple things. I'm going to go deep with this. Thank you. Juicy. First of all, everyone's getting ghosted. Ghosting is more generational than it is about recruiters or because job seekers are also ghosting recruiters in interviews. And that's honestly more about like the generation. Gen Z has stated out loud that ghosting is no response is a response. No response is, they believe, is that they're communicating disinterest. They even do it with their boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. They break up just by ghosting. It's weird. I don't know. I'm not a fan. So let's get the ghosting part out of here and let's answer the question. So I also have a very nonlinear background. I've had director level roles, then contract IC roles after, then VP level role, then a contract IC role, because I don't care. Okay. The reason why I don't have a clean growth trajectory, well, a couple of things. One, I had 3 kids by 26. Clean growth trajectory, my ass. I had to feed them. I didn't have the luxury of caring if my next title was the clean trajectory that is considered to be perfect. I didn't have that luxury because kids would have starved, right? In me having that concern. Also, some people who care are very, very egoic, right? So, like, I don't care. I don't care what my title is. I care about the work I do and the people I work with, period. That's what I care about. I don't care about title. Like, that, for what? Although now I understand why people do, because, it is impacting me just like it's impacting you, Nathan. So back to parts of your question. Are there people in the recruiting staff world that understand this? Yeah. In fact, a lot of us have that background, but let's go back to who has their hand on the lever of what is considered a target candidate. It's not the recruiter, right? Recruiters are we're solution providers to hiring managers. Whether we're sitting inside a company as a corporate recruiter or whether we're an agency, especially an agency recruiter, okay? Here's a caveat with agency recruiters. They don't get paid if they don't bring the right talent to their client. Okay? So it's not like we're acting on our own perceptions, our own biases, our own target idea of what a great candidate is. Sure, in the early conversations, the kickoff call with the hiring manager, we do have some of these conversations. We talk about what they really need and we bring up suggestions or we'll ask questions. How do you feel about this or that? What if they don't have a perfectly clean trajectory, but they have this, that, and the other thing? So we prod those things a lot. But at the end of the day, if they say, I will only look at candidates who have a growth trajectory that is, it's perfectly, angled up and to the right, right? They had every single role was a progress to in the next level. If that's what they believe matters, I don't believe that matters for much. But I'm not the one making the decision or paying the invoice on the recruiting or whatever, right? It's not up to me. I'm providing a service to somebody else. The service is to bring them the candidates and the talent that they want and they believe matters. Now, if they blatantly ask me to discriminate and to not, then I fire clients all the time. Then no, sorry, go work with somebody else who has no integrity, but I'm not going to participate in that. But that's not really discrimination. Only being willing to look at people who have a certain growth trajectory in their career isn't really discrimination. It is bias, but they're entitled to their bias in hiring for their team. It affects me a lot because I don't have that clean trajectory, especially in this market. So clean trajectory and other kind of arbitrary style evaluations are just a sign of an imbalanced job market. If we are flush with talent, we have to add more and more and more requirements because otherwise we'll never get the 1,000 applicants down to how many we can interview. That's just common sense. In the job market, especially in the tech world, has been completely the opposite for my entire career. For 25 years, I was in high demand and everybody around me was in high demand. And even if I got laid off, I was picked up within days, weeks, not long. I used to have to ask for time in between because I wanted to, take a break. But this is a totally different market. So all those additional arbitrary biases are added because it's otherwise really challenging to, get to a target. And in these markets where there's so many people laid off, hiring managers can be much more picky and particular about who they're interviewing. Again, I have been actively, specifically rejected for not having a clean growth trajectory. The other thing that I want people to consider, and here's where it gets controversial, is that not all companies are looking to hire the best possible talent. Okay? We actually have created a whole lot of systems that usually impact the outliers, the people that maybe are the smartest or maybe have the most value to add or maybe are really adept critical thinkers, very strategic, can consider multiple perspectives and come out with the best solution regardless of their personal feel. All those attributes, the pattern recognition, the contrarian mindset, the willingness and courage to push back, those are all super high value traits that the average company is not looking for. In fact, they've created process to filter that out and to filter in the 80%, the median, the average, right? The compliant, the obedient. That just is reality. I know that we all believe that every company wants to make the absolute best hire, but what they consider the best hire isn't always the most impactful person, right? Once a company builds these machines, these big corporate machines, they design the cogs and the wheels to be fairly easily replaceable. I know that feels bad if you've been in those roles to be considered easily replaceable, but I think that companies have all but proved that over the last 3 years is that, okay, in tech, the machines are finally built. That means we need less ideators, visionaries, contrarians, misfits, renegades, and more obedient doers, people who aren't going to push back, even keeled folks. Like, companies need different things and different traits and attributes at different stages. So I think that hopefully, Nathan, I don't know if that's helpful to you or not. Yes, there are people who totally get it, but we also aren't all the way in the control seat as to what a hiring manager considers. I personally, probably more than most others, really do challenge hiring leader biases. I make them explain their thinking to me. So if they say, I only want a super clean growth trajectory, I ask them why. I ask them to really drill in on what scenario has gotten them to that belief system, right? To me, that's a limiting belief, right? But it is also true that you could look at a background like mine, Nathan, or maybe even yours, and deduce that we might not be super happy in a very large corporate, overly structured environment where things don't make sense, but you got to do them anyway. I would hate that, right? So there is some truth to lack of alignment around a really varied background, right? Um, it shows unstructured preference for a lack of structure, maybe. For me, that's true, right? I don't care. I don't make decisions based on title. I make decisions based on, like I said, I care about the work I do and I care about the people I do it with. So I hope that's helpful. Oh, good. Thank you for answering. That makes a lot of sense. As a former regional director for a Fortune 500 company, I progressed to a director of operations of a plumbing company, then to a vice chairman, then to a consultant building departments, private communities with well over 50K people, and networks building startups. I seem to have little to no traction in the sixth, seventh, or ninth round interviews, and then they cancel the position. Okay, so the other side of this is that that's a red flag. Sixth, seventh, and ninth round interviews in an environment that is a fairly traditional environment. You're in like the building world, if what I'm reading is correct. Yeah, trades, building, construction, like their seventh and ninth round interviews in that environment is absolutely a red flag. Now, a lot of interviews in an environment that isn't built out, it's not structured, it's early stage, nobody really knows what they're actually looking for until they see it, is a slightly more understandable. And also, the payout is higher, the stakes are higher, the equity is there, the ownership is so like it's rigorous, right? But 6, 7, and 9 rounds in your field, to me, would be a red flag, at the very least, an orange one. Like, they probably have no clue what's happening. Now, the other thing in your area, there's 2 things happening in your area that are really interesting simultaneously. One, there's a shortage of talent because young people aren't going into the trades. I'm so grateful that my son went into concrete inspection because he bought his first house at 25, he and his wife, and all the 25-year-olds I know are like, we can't buy homes, but that's because they're, I really want the content job or whatever. So I'm grateful for that. I do say that one way to be AI proof is to go into plumbing because I don't ever see that robots are going to take over plumbing. It would be more expensive for a robot to do plumbing than for a human. So yeah, I don't know. I would say but anyway, I'm sorry. The other side of the interesting dichotomy in your space is that there's both a talent shortage, also a tremendous amount of volatility around raw materials coming in with tariffs and other impacts of the global economy, of the wars going on, of, various different geopolitical shit show items, whatever. So it's very interesting, Nathan. You're in a very interesting world right now. I would imagine that's why you're seeing a lot of stop, start, hesitation. You know, things are looking good, but then Trump does something and now things are looking different or whatever. Like you guys are very in the crux of a lot of changes too. So I think it's an interesting thing. Um, I really do believe in your space specifically, getting very, very, very niche around your job search strategy is going to be your key. Narrow down to like these 20 companies I want to work for and why. This is my very clear, unique value proposition. And this is how my unique value proposition is applicable in these 20 companies, in these environments, in this specific. That's my experience in the last couple of years is just people who are very, very clear on what they want and what they're targeting, and then they network accordingly, right? So they don't necessarily wait for one of their 20 target job companies to have an open job. They're constantly talking to people in that company on LinkedIn, wherever, at conferences. And so when something does open up, or I've seen companies create roles for, wow, this person really has a handle on this perspective, especially if you come in with unique and interesting perspectives and use cases around AI in your niche industry. That like anybody who has really good solid AI use cases and data to go with it in your area of focus, you're going to be in demand because most people have no idea what to implement, how to implement it, and why. They just don't. So if you do, Nathan, you may want to take a course or you may want to dig into that, but that's probably a good idea. Okay, Aaron, on the candidate side, have you noticed anything about how candidates consider startups with less structure and less job security? Is it harder for startups to hire people at startups because of this? How would you find those kind of candidates? Okay, good question. So this has been my world, right? I've always been a startup renegade. I love unstructured environments where a lot of thinking is required, interesting problems to solve, no clear playbooks. We're building everything. And then once it's built, I Mary Poppins my way out, because I don't fit in other environments. I fit in builder owner environments. Okay. So if people look at startup jobs and job descriptions and they're like, they have a visceral reaction to the, what is it, 669,996, whatever. It's like you're working all the time. You're fully immersed in your job all the time. If that's a problem, you probably aren't a great fit or well aligned to that environment. So renegade type people have no problem trading off structure for the ability to make major impact, to be involved in the creation of something. It's a completely different experience. I have been in a couple larger environments for like 5 to 7 minutes tops because I can't stomach bureaucracy like that. Bureaucracy is too full of things that don't make sense. And yeah, so that's hard for me. But so I've always known that I belong in unstructured, scrappy environments. But then there will come an inflection point in the growth of the company where I no longer fit. And one of the downsides of being like that is that you're always going to get to a point where there's too much structure. The machine is built. The cogs are easily replaceable now. And the suits come in to add the gravitas so that we can IPO or exit, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't want any part of that stuff. So I'm out. Okay. It's not hard to find these people because most of us know exactly who we are. We tend to be incredibly neurodivergent. I think this isn't all, because again, divergent means we're all different, but I think that really smart, creative, neurodivergent people who love problem solving fit in earlier stage companies. They really do not fit in very overly structured environments. But then I also know some neurodivergent people who their own critical thinking process is challenged. Their executive function is challenged. So they actually need much more structure, right? I actually think most neurodivergent people fall on one of the end or the other. Very few are going to be like comfy in a very average structured big company. So I don't know, Aaron, if I'm super answering your question, but it's easy to identify these people. These people refer to themselves as early stage renegades, misfits. They love scrappy environments. They like to build things. They don't like to manage things. If something doesn't make sense, these are the people that status quo answers makes them just absolutely, come out of their skin. If I say, why do we do it this way? And you say, because we've always done it this way, like I'm running out the back door, like, and I'll run as far as I can go. So, I hope that's helpful, Aaron. Was that helpful? I don't know. I can go deeper on that topic too, because I have a lot of experience. Um, da, 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 da. Automotive, and even building. Yeah. Yeah. Nathan, I'm happy to hop on a call with you. Anybody who would like a call, I'm happy to hop on. When you need approval to get approval. Yeah, Aaron, like that's the stuff that makes no sense. And why do we do it this way conversation that makes my eyes roll back in my head. And like the fact that there's all these people who are perfectly fine engaging in a process they know makes no sense, isn't beneficial for anyone, and they do it anyway quietly with a smile. Like that's gagalicious to me. I just, it makes me sick. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with those people. A lot of times those people are like, they achieve and access fulfillment and deep, like, deep cognitive fulfillment outside of their jobs. And that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with wanting to just go 8 to 5, do your job, not be overly stressed or pressured, and like leave and not think about any of it. That's fine. It just isn't me. So, yeah, Aaron, we should totally hop on a call. I mean, that makes a lot of good sense. I think we've engaged quite a bit out here, so I would love to. Coming into a chaotic, impossible idea, making it happen. That's what I love to build. Yeah, Nathan, you sound like a startup renegade, and I see that you've done a lot of that as well. So, yeah. Now let's package that, Nathan. Well, I'm happy to get on a call, and let's package that to be a very clear, unique value prop in a very specific environments, and then go nuts with that, right? Or explore what could you do independently to spin something up that's related. Maybe it's on you to spin up the bridge between, this more traditional building world and accessing technology and opportunities to better connect people to that world. Maybe for you, it's going around to schools all over the country and selling why it's a good idea to get into the trades right now. Maybe you're going to build a whole community, Nathan, about AI proofing your career by going into the trades. Like, I could think of a million different ways just to take your particular current challenge and leverage it and spin it and channel it into something valuable that also creates income for you. In fact, that's super fun for me. I should do a whole separate one of these about that type of thing. I've been through so many hard things in my life, and I'm grateful for every single one of them, because every single one of them has been channeled into some kind of creation or lesson or opportunity or serendipitous event of some nature, because openness, because, you know, because abundance, because optimism. I know optimism sounds toxic to people who are super attached to the scarcity narrative, but like, I'm just not, and I probably will never be. I'm okay with that. So, anyway, we got to wrap. We're getting to the end. QR code. Please join us in the school community, the Rebel HR, where me and other veteran recruiters who are also spicy, snarky, and transparent and a little provocative like to give information, and come join us in there. And I'm here every Wednesday morning at the same time, 8:05 Pacific, 11:05 Eastern, every single Wednesday morning. And I'm super grateful for everybody for joining in. Share with a friend. These are all watchable after the live is over. I'm also on YouTube. Please go subscribe. I have no subscribers. It's super sad. So go subscribe. I have no subscribers on YouTube. Maybe next week I'll put a QR code up for my YouTube, if I can figure out how to do that. So, but anyway, thank you all for joining, and I will see you next week or in the community. which, by the way, there's also an Ask Me Anything channel in the community, and you can ask anything and you'll get my answers as well as other recruiter answers. So see you next week.